All right, folks. Again, my guest is Bob Chapman, coming from somewhere smarter than most, in hiding. Seems like we got a lot of people. Oh yeah. Let's bring this up. What about Alwaki? How about just killing people that we think are terrorists without any proof, without any just send a plane over, you know.
Just what?
They just send one of these predators over, one of these drones over to shoot an American because he might be a terrorist. What about that?
Well, of course, it's wrong. It's against the law. Ron Paul spoke to it, and others have too. And but I don't think he was ever killed. I think it was another reason to play terrorism.
So
and you know, he's one of them. He works for the CIA.
Go
ahead.
Okay, so he may not even be dead. This may be another Bin Laden. Of course, Bin Laden was dead for what, 10 years before?
Well, he exhumed him about 67 times.
It's all manipulated. All of this is manipulating here to bring us
that's for sure.
Hegelian. This is a Hegelian dialectic here, Bob.
Yes, that's true.
Now, there's also buzz on the internet, and you know, possibly all these things are scripted in New York to build the fear and the anger at the police. I mean, I'm trying to put together an event right now in Cochise County on behalf of the Sheriff Larry Deaver. And he and Paul Bobo and Sheriff Joe Arpaio are, well, they're doing the same thing to them that they've done to me. Oh, they're racist. They're racist. They want to enforce the law. They must be racist. And in New York, we got police beating the demonstrators. And I basically agree with the 7 principles that they have made public for these Soros-backed Tea Parties. You know,
but the solutions are dreadful.
What are their solutions? I mean, you know, to me it seems that the solutions are fairly simple.
Minimum wage of a minimum wage of $20 an hour. You can start there. It's horrible. I don't have them in front of me, but it reads like the Communist Manifesto. You know, all they're doing is playing these people off against the public, eventually the police, into violence, and the next step will be into martial law. This is what they're trying to attempt here. This is their first overt attempt to do it, and they use a bunch of old rolled over communists to do it. It's not only communists in there, there's Marxists, Leninists, liberals, socialists. I mean, just read their signs. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure it out. And there's one thing I wanted to mention to you since I last talked to you. The government has cranked up their machinery to attack me again.
Oh, yeah?
And they went after one of the programs that email bombed it, and we were able to trace it back to the Bank of America in northern New Jersey, which we found is being used as a front by the Justice Department. Isn't that cute, huh? So anyway, once we announced that we know who was doing it, anyway, they must have been very surprised. They shut it all down and stopped attacking me. They attacked me basically because I tell the people the truth about what's going on and what's in the system. And you know, these attacks go on, probably every 6 months or so. I don't know if you've ever been contacted, but they even called the people that I'm on the air with, not in the guise of their government, as a complainant, so to speak, and tell them all sorts of untrue, horrible things about me, and try to get them to throw me off their radio programs. That's been going on for about 15 years in a big way. So I thought I'd let the audience know that I'm not immune, and I don't step over the line at all. I just tell people the truth. They don't like it.
Now, the original 7 demands is one. Come on here. Let me see if I can get these listed here. The original Occupation Wall Street had 7 core demands: end corporate collusion, investigate and hold accountable, end the Fed, no more too big to fail banks, and end corporate personhood, repeal the Patriot Act, war on drugs, cut the end all imperial wars of aggression, bring the troops home from all countries, cut the military budget, limit the military role to protection of the homeland.
It sounds like a conservative manifesto. And that's what they deliberately did. They used what conservatives are for, which is all true, and now their solutions are, let's turn America into a Marxist enclave.
This is what they did when the communists took over, you know, except then, here they're saying investigate Wall Street and hold senior account executives accountable for the destruction of in wealth that has devastated millions of people. That sounds good on the surface, but, you know, I've said a number of times, you know, if communism was what it was cracked up to be, I might be all for it, but it's all based on lies, and this is the same thing is happening in America now. As the communists are taking over, they're playing the same thing. Oh, the Tsar was a bad guy. Oh, we gotta control the kings and the wealth of all of these countries.
You're right.
Nothing's changed. So they've got some good ideas here, but how are they going to turn this around?
Well, they're not. They're going to try to create a revolutionary atmosphere. That's what they're after.
Their third plank here.
I keep telling people to work through the system. If we don't do that, we're going to have to get into the streets, and we don't want to do that.
It looks like that's what they're pushing us to another Egyptian-style revolution. Are they trying?
I hope that with your contacts with the police, that you tell them what these guys are up to.
We're trying. As a matter of fact, for the event that I'm putting on with the sheriff of Cochise County, you know, I'm just working on an article about that. You know, it ought to be the event is supposed to be a motorcycle event, and it's supposed to benefit the veterans and the police chief. Now, the police, I'm sorry, the sheriff. The sheriff needs support of the people. If the people were behind the sheriff and the sheriff could call up these people and deputize them, make them a posse, then and to help control the crime or the illegals, to help protect the ranchers and the farmers, because anytime communist regime comes after a country, they go after the farmers first, and we're already getting farmers and ranchers being threatened by these drug gangs that are being armed by our own government. I mean, this is just this whole gun running scheme of the BATF. It just kind of astounds me with the total criminality. It's like the communists have suddenly dropped all pretenses and just, hey, we're running this, yeah, we're supplying the drugs, yeah, we're bringing the drugs over, and yeah, we're gonna make you into criminals, just like Ayn Rand said. I mean, you know, if we don't have if the government doesn't have any control over honest people, so they got to make criminals out of us.
Well, this program, Fast and Furious, was in operation during the Bush administrations, and it's actually run by the Central Intelligence Agency that works very closely with the Sinaloa cartel. And I know a lot about that because several years ago I used to live in Culiacan, which is the capital of Sinaloa. And so I know a lot of these people. So I've known for years what the game is. And the guns are readily available in Sinaloa. It is not difficult to get weapons. And I can say that with a surety because I lived there. And quite frankly, I lived right in the middle of all the narcotraficantes. And so I knew many of them, socially that is. In fact, I used to, most of them have private police with automatic weapons guarding their residences, and they used to guard mine too. Now, which I thought was rather funny, but they liked me, what can I tell you?
Just in the hour before the show, I read a little bit of a novel that I wrote 40 years ago. I did it 40 years ago while I was doing time for marijuana, when it was a potential life sentence in Texas to get caught with a joint. And number 6 on their core demands of the Wall Street protesters are to repeal the Patriot Act, end the war on drugs, and protect civil liberties. I've said that the war on drugs is a war against the American people. And it's the excuse they're using. The CIA and the Mossad were bringing the drugs in during Operation Watchtower that's ran in conjunction with Iran-Contra. All the same people, CIA, Mossad, all bringing the drugs and flying them into a nice little protected airport. They had a friendly governor, and the airport was called Mena, Arkansas. You know, to me, the whole thing, this whole thing is, if you end the war on drugs, if you basically abolish all the laws that have no victim, then we got 50 million people that would have been criminals, that aren't criminals, that weren't criminals, that have had their rights taken away because they got caught with something in their pocket. To me, the war on drugs is the epitome and the beginning of this whole globalization plan, one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, and for the banksters, and criminalizing them, turning the American people into criminals so they can put 40 million of us in prison.
My son-in-law received a doctorate in criminology, and he did his master's at Florida State. And Gary Kleck is one of the top 3 criminologists in America, and he was head of the department. So I knew him and had spoken to him a number of times and went to university events. I was living in Florida at that time. And so I knew him, and we talked about these things. And he said exactly what you just said. He said the whole thing's a racket to keep young people in prison, particularly black and brown people, just to get them out of the way. And so one of the most eminent sources on criminology in America today agrees with you, because I've discussed it with him.
What the novel, the science fiction novel I wrote 40 years ago was about a country where everything was legal. And somebody just sent me a link that corresponds with what used to occupy Wall Street. That came from the New American, who occasionally does some good work. There is, if a crime, if somebody doesn't have, if there's no corpus delicti, if there's no victim here, then we shouldn't have a crime. Or my God, what part of the Constitution allows the government to make whatever you're growing in your backyard illegal? So the whole war on drugs is really a war on the American people. Now also let me bring this. I'm talking about Cochise County. I'm talking about doing another thing here. I'm talking about trying to bring the veterans together. We got a lot of homeless veterans. Well, you got a lot of land over here on a ranch. You're trying to run a ranch. The ranchers tell me they can't get help. They can't get, the teenagers don't want to, the kids don't want to work. You know, and you got the CIA bringing the drugs into this country. You got the media, the mainstream media, the movie companies glamorizing the use of drugs, and the kids are getting hooked on it. I mean, somebody asked me once, well, Clay, isn't marijuana a gateway drug? I said, absolutely. If you got to go to a drug dealer to buy it, they sure going to want to sell you some cocaine. Here's some meth. This will help you do your test. You know, so this whole thing, and what's it cost us? 50,000 taxpayer dollars for every person we throw in one of these prisons a year to feed them.
No.
To clothe them. What?
No. The figure runs between $35,000 and $55,000 a year to house and feed and give medical care to people in prisons.
And 40% of the prisoners, the 40% of the people in these prisons now are illegals. So I mean,
so they should send them all back from where they came from.
That's exactly what we should be doing. Why do we need to house these people? If isn't Mexico doing the same thing to us that Cuba did? They send all their criminals up here so we can take care of them.
Well, I don't know that they've done that, but the economy at one time, up until 3 or 4 years ago, was such that the opportunities were better in the United States, and that's why people went there. Very few people are going to the United States today compared to what used to go, because the jobs aren't there. And many people have left the United States and gone back to Central and South America and Mexico and the Philippines and all these places that people come from.
You know, of course, we're accused, Sheriff Deaver, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and me are all accused of being racist. I frankly don't care what color you are. I don't care what your religion is. You know, you want to get your knees down on your knees and stick your nose in the dirt and pray to Mecca. Knock yourself out. Just don't expect me to get on my knees with you. But I will try to keep the German Shepherd off of you, you know, while you're praying there. So it's they're trying to say we're racist here. If I lived in Mexico and I couldn't feed my family, I'd be walking up here with them.
Absolutely, and they're very hard-working people, especially Mexicans. I mean, you know, they get out to go to work. They arrive between 6 and 8 in the morning, and they work until 6 or 7 at night, and they work on Saturdays all day, and they work hard.
They do, and you know, that's why. You know, because the ranchers tell me they can't get teenagers to work on the farms anymore. You know, I'm reminded of the old song, how are you gonna how you going to get them back on the farm after they've seen L.A.?
Yeah.
And you know, they're using them to ship the drugs over here. Pretty simple. I mean, all you got to do is make, if they just stayed on their side of the border and set up a little stand there, you know, so anybody that wanted it in America could go over there and buy whatever drug they wanted from them. Well, that might hurt the pharmaceutical companies, but I can't see that would hurt anyone else. Everything, every type of drug is available at your local high school. You know, certainly they're in every colleges, and actually a lot of them are available in prisons too, you know. So the war on drugs hasn't stopped anything.
As long as Americans keep on taking drugs, there will be CIA drug running and narcotics traffickers throughout the world. And the minute they stop using drugs in America, the suppliers all go out of business. I mean, it's pretty simple. And that's the solution. Don't use them. Then there's nobody to sell to. And then they go out of business. They go back to, you know, making clothing or whatever they did before.
Well, I've always had access to whatever I want. You know, I quit doing cocaine when I realized the CIA was making all the money off of it 25 years ago. I didn't want to support them, so I didn't buy it. I didn't do that. You know, and I'm not even really pleased with the whole medical marijuana thing. I mean, for the first time in 40 years, I'm not a criminal if I smoke a little bit of weed, but I got to go pay a medical doctor, and to me that's the same thing as going to a drug dealer. I mean, well, here, why don't you just take this Valium, because you got a 2,000, a pharmaceutical company has a 2,000% markup on it. So I don't really want to do Valium, and frankly, you know, I use the same philosophy that you just spoke of. I don't take pharmaceuticals. I don't support the drug companies. They don't make any kind of drugs that I want. And when I got out of the hospital after being drugged for 3 months, no memory of 3 months in the hospital for 3 broken ribs, Bob, I said the only thing I need is a joint and a Harley, man. I'm not taking any more pills, and never have. So the pharmaceutical industry right now, how many millions of Americans are drugged? I mean, 20 years ago you couldn't advertise something like Valium or on television. Today, every other commercial is for a pharmaceutical company.
You know, it's interesting that 70% of retirees use Valium or something like that.
My mother got out of the hospital. I went to see her, and they moved her out of the hospital. She had had triple bypass. They put her in a little nursing home, and I went to see her, and she couldn't even talk to me. And I went to the doctor. I said, "This isn't from the operation. What's the matter with her?" "Oh, we're giving her drugs. We give them all drugs to keep them quiet, to make them comfortable, you know." So I said, "Well, guess what? That ain't gonna happen no more. Pack her bags. I'm taking her out of here right now." And I took her out, and she lived for many years after that. Did probably were still owned some of the drugs in one of the nursing homes, but at least they might have had her on some pain pills or some mild medication, but at least she could communicate with me for the next few years. So that's what they're doing. They're drugging Americans. I mean, come on, they're sitting them in front of televisions. They're pumping. Why you need this drug in every other commercial? So are they doing the same thing as that they did to the Chinese with opium and heroin?
That's right. The British grew it over there in India, and which they had conquered, And they employed not only their own ships, commercial boats, but they brought into service the shipping companies in the United States, which are owned by Forbes and Schwab and Rockefeller, Cabot, the Lodges, the Saltonstall. I grew up in that area, that's how I know that. And they all made their original fortunes in the early 1800s running drugs from India to China. That's all the biggest fortunes, the most money ever made in the continual history of mankind has been in drugs. For some reason, people like to get out of it. I mean, you know, I've never used drugs, I don't know about them, and I never will. But some people like them. But I think it's a personality thing. Some people can't face the world the way it is. I can hardly blame them. It's a pretty screwed up place. But, you know, that's where it's all at. You have people who are just misfits.
I did a lot of drugs in my life because I wanted to know what the truth was. I wanted to know what they were talking about. I wanted to know why, you know. And but I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. No, a lot of people don't have the ability to just put something down and walk away from it. You know, I'm not strung out on anything. I don't get addicted. I don't drink, you know, I've got a 2 or 3 drink limit. I don't get drunk. I don't get stoned. I don't get screwed up. And, you know, but I can write about it, and I can relate to people. I can talk to people. I can talk to you know, younger people about it and be straight with them, you know. All things in moderation, you know. Don't let anything get a hold of you. Don't get addicted. I mean, my mother and grandmother, Bob, my mother and grandmother were drug addicts. I had no idea. I thought that everybody just went to the doctor once a week. My mother and grandmother went to the doctor once a week or once a month to get their prescriptions. My grandmother was strung out on sleeping pills. I thought she was just old and feeble until I took one of her Reds. Wow, this is why grandma's been stumbling around. You know, my mother was, they had her own pain pills her whole life. She basically, she didn't work for me or for us. She worked for the pharmaceutical company. She worked for the doctors. And, you know, not to put doctors down. I mean, you know, if you got a broken arm or you know, you cut yourself whittling, you know, and you don't have super glue, you know, you might need to go to the doctor and get stitches. I personally like super glue.
You're a character.
I always carried a little bottle of super glue in my tackle box when I was out fishing. You cut yourself on the ocean, you know, that's not too many doctors around to stitch you up. A little bit of super glue and you're just fine.
It's funny.
It's right now, to me, the enemies we got are the medical, industrial, military complex. I mean, Eisenhower even warned us about that, and it's what's happening here. It's what's happening here right now. In Texas, the Agricultural Board in Texas